Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tarot Tapestry. And today we will be talking about the Strength card, which in the Rider-Waite deck is number 8. And some of you who work with the Marseille deck, that would be number 11. So I'm joined here with my co-hosts, Angie and Linda. So excited to kind of get back to the cards. We have kind of diverted a little bit by trying some other topics on this podcast. So it feels kind of good coming back to strength. And I have a personal attachment to strength. It happens to be my birth card. So I have been, excuse me, using it. I'm going to say probably more so for the last 5 years of my life going through my sobriety. And it has had a very strong impact, just on my life and how I am learning to approach some adversities that come up. So I'm pretty excited to talk about it. Would any of you guys like to start off our conversation?
I will start if you want.
Beautiful.
I use in my own personal daily practice, I use the Spirit Keeper's Tarot by Bennett Bowen. And so I knew that we were scheduling this and I read her uh description in that deck. It's called the Force, and in the RWS, of course, it's called Strength. And I really love this quote, and this way of looking at it when I sat with it today helped me figure out a way to do a thing I've been trying to do. And so when I give my reading today, when we get to the part where Kate shares her wonderful the spread that she found, this is where like kind of the direction I'm coming at the reading from. And the quote that I really love from there is, when key 8 is tailing you in your card readings and visions, then what will most empower you to advance along your path is concentration. Concentrate. Then control the way you project that concentrated form of energy outward into your defined direction. So I'm going to, yeah, I want to give a reading kind of from that perspective for anyone who's listening, that it might help figure out how to do a thing too. And I'll be using the RWS deck when I pull cards for the spread. But I just wanted to give credit to my Spirit Keepers Tarot for inspiring this kind of breakthrough for myself. So, and give
It
an example
sounds
of how it can happen sometimes.
it sounds very intriguing. I was like listening to it and being like, okay, so maybe I haven't really seen or used the strength card in that way. So I'm pretty excited to
Yeah,
see what
I haven't
you
either. Different way of thinking about it for me. I've always thought of it as, balancing between your two impulses, I guess, kind of like balancing the devil and the angel on your shoulders. But this was a different way of looking at it, and looking at this card. It's the same card, it has a lot of the same meanings. It was in a different deck, but all of the meanings line up. Um, and I just thought it was really neat how that can happen, after reading tarot for however many years it's been that I've been reading tarot, lots of them. And you're never too knowledgeable to learn a new thing.
absolutely, absolutely. When I was thinking about the strength card, so I'm using the Light Seers deck, and that is where I got the in her new book. At the end of each of the major arcana cards, she has a spread that she put together. So that's the spread that we will be pulling cards on later on in the episode. But when in her card, is a woman that's standing there, and half of her face is a lion, and the other half of her face is a human, and she has a lamb that's sitting on her lap. And I love this interpretation of the card because one, the first thing I thought about was how, we wear masks, right? Every time we are out there in the world, we're wearing a mask. And in this case, the mask is our animal versus our human side, right? Our animalistic side versus our human side. Although sometimes these days I wonder if they're one and the same, because sometimes they can be, right? Sometimes our humanness can be very animalistic, so to
Mhm.
say. Um, and I just love the idea of a lion. And in the Rider-Waite deck, in that deck, she's holding the mouth of the lion open, right? But there isn't a sense of scariness when you look at the card, right? You see in the Rider-Waite, you see the woman opening the mouth, but she's doing it in a way that is very gentle, very caring. Um, so as I was, just doing some more research with the strength card, the first thing that came to my mind was this idea of being able to tame the beast inside of us. Because the strength card really deals with our inner strength, not so much of our external strength, but our inner strength. And it was being able to tame that beast. And I guess I look at the beast as the part of me that wants to um, react to things that are going on in my life in a way that just isn't beneficial, that isn't going to help me. Maybe I'm going to be too assertive. Maybe I'm going to be way too aggressive. Maybe I'm going to be angry. Maybe I'm going to be frustrated. And that is going to show in my words, in my actions, and the things that I do. And the strength card reminds me to use many of those like those inner qualities that I have inside to kind of help me find a balance between doing what I want to do, having that assertiveness, but in a way that is not aggressive. That's maybe a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more gentle, a little bit more graceful. And that was a word that I have associated with strength, but not always. When people used to use the word graceful to me, I didn't like it because I had interpreted that meaning, that word, as being passive and agreeing with what everybody else was saying, and almost like I need to stand back and not voice my opinion. I have to, have this like face, like, oh, okay, yeah, oh, yeah, uh-huh, and I started to realize. And mostly I'm going to say again to my getting sober years, that no, like being graceful is being authoritative but compassionate at the same time, if you can
Right.
imagine that.
Yeah, being right the way that you know is right without having to make anyone else wrong, right? And I
Yes.
also like the imagery in the classical RWS. She's taming the beast, but she's not ignoring the beast, right? She knows what's the matter with the lion, you know, um, and I like that you incorporated that into your discussion about the two different sides that are shown in that card, the two different sides of strength. One of them is very gentle and one of them is very out of control. And if you don't balance those, you can end up being either a doormat or a horrible ogre that nobody wants to hang out with because you're just always right, and if you're right, then they're wrong. And I agree with you. Graceful can make people think of the doormat end of that, but that's not what it is at all.
No, not at all. And it's actually quite beautiful when you think about that ability to, if you think about a true leader, right? If you take on a leadership role, you need to learn how to be assertive with the people that you are leading, but you have to do it in a way that is going to still make them feel valued and appreciated for their hard work.
Hmm.
And that to me is part of compassion, right? You have to be aware of how people feel, and you want to keep, the people motivated to keep on going. So you need to lead in a way that's going to allow them to do that, but also receive, the product that you need at the end,
Yeah, exactly.
of it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a true balance between the two. And then one other thing, and then we'll move on, is that I started to think about like our inner strength. And I did mention that we have like qualities inside of us that make up that inner strength. And I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that because these qualities have been very pivotal in my own self-growth throughout the years. So, like the first one was self-awareness, right? It's very hard to work on our inner strength if we are not aware or have an understanding about things about ourselves and just how we navigate the choices that we make. We make choices and there are reasons why we make those choices. Um, so having this self-awareness and learning about yourself, right? Learning about what motivates you, right? Learning about your emotions, right? Learning about what are some of your strengths and weaknesses and how you can use all of that to basically achieve your goals or get the things in life that you want, right? And then another one was like emotional regulation. And we did a whole episode on
Yep.
that. And it was a really freaking good episode, and
Mhm.
the idea of, understanding your emotions and how having that understanding is really important in just how you carry yourself in society, how you express the things that you need and the things that you want. And it affects, I even think, like your motivation in accomplishing goals, and we had talked about that ruler acronym, right? RULER, which was recognize and understand, label, express, and regulate your emotions and kind of putting that together. Another one was like your self-confidence, right? Like believing in yourself, like you need to know and believe that you can achieve these goals, especially, in times where things are extremely challenging,
Yeah.
right? Like that's important. And then the other thing was your determination and your
Mhm.
perseverance. Like, you know, utilizing that I want to get this done and I'm going to overcome these challenges and I know that I can. And
Mhm.
I thought those were really good. And like along with like your self-compassion and then the other one was integrity, like learning to stay true to who you are and what you believe, and that's like an inner strength to me that like um guides you to where you want to go is knowing who you are, learning, right? Self-growth is all about learning who you are, and once you start to learn about who you are and what your values are and what your principles are and what you stand for, that kind of starts to now guide you throughout your path in life.
Mhm.
So a lot of talking. I'm going to stop
That's
talking.
wonderful.
I just got so
Oh, no,
excited
no.
about this
It's
topic.
so cool to listen to you talk about this card, and I absolutely love everything you're saying. It's a lot of balance between um, you don't want to be all one thing or the other. You need to learn, and you can't learn how to balance that if you will not look at the beastly, in quotes, part of yourself and understand it. What created this? Like, when you have a really strong reaction, anger or, you know, whatever to outside circumstances, you don't want to react from that place, but you also want to understand that if you slow down and figure out, okay, why do I feel this way,
Hmm.
then you can respond, and you can respond in a way that is very authentic and very you and very graceful because you figured out how you feel and what you want to do with it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, the other thing that maintain like part of the integrity, like you said, is maintaining your authenticity,
hmm,
who I am and who do I want to become, and
yeah.
how I can take this idea of this inner strength and all of these qualities that I have regarding that and using that to, I'm going to have a coughing attack.
No. Okay.
I think she's going to need a minute.
Yeah.
Um, I had also done a little reading. I went to Rachel Pollack, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. And it's really interesting because she divides the major arcana up into three what she calls lines, with the Fool kind of being out because that leaves 21 cards. So each line has 7 cards, and so the first line ends with the Chariot, and then you move to the beginning of the second line, which would be Strength. And she also talks about what Kate had mentioned about, sort of taming the energy of the unconscious and being strong enough to confront that. And also she talks about the way that the Marseille deck, the switching of the cards from Justice to Strength. And she talks about how um, Justice, when you come out of that first line, which is all about sort of the beginning emotional feelings as a young person, to come right into Justice, to confront, because Justice is kind of like you confront your life a little bit. It was a little bit much. And so the Strength part is, they kind of, her feeling about how they switched it was that, in the Strength part, you start to confront your unconscious. As you become more mature, you begin to realize that you have an unconscious and you might have to deal with some of this stuff that's built up over the years of your life, like when you're an older adolescent or into your 20s and that kind of thing. And so to have Strength there, it sort of fits better for everything to segue after that. But the other thing that she talked about that I thought was really interesting, because I am using the traditional RWS deck for this podcast, is that when you look at the female figure, um, on the card, she has the lemniscate infinity symbol over her head, and she also has on a white dress with a floral belt or kind of a garland around the waist. And she says, in this way, this card sort of brings in, and with your Strength, you are bringing in the qualities of the Magician, and you're also bringing in the qualities of the Empress to this card to help you with all the stuff that you have to do. So you have the creativity and the fertility, if you want to call that, or just the creative mind of the Empress, and the magical symbol of the Magician. And so when you put all this together to help deal with the unconscious, that's where the Strength part comes in. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that we talk about dealing with things and having inner strength and being able to um, deal with what comes our way, etc. But the other thing that I think is a good point is that sometimes strength means saying no. And strength means having the strength not to do something, not to participate in something that you feel is not right, or not to do something for somebody when you know they really should be doing it for themselves. And that's very difficult when you're used to, that's breaking a habit. That's also dealing with some kind of unconscious, why do I always do this for this person when they're grown and they can do it for themselves, and I don't know what it is. But so Strength can be a positive thing, and it can also be more passive and internal, because not passive, but I think about, I think about the strength of Colin Kaepernick when he took a knee during the national anthem because of Black Lives Matter. And I think about the strength of people who just, link arms and stand in front of the police and won't let them go any further. And that's the kind of that quiet, they're not brandishing weapons, they're not, any of that, but they're very, very strong and rooted in their own beliefs and convictions.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's It's standing your ground. It's being true to who you are, but in a non-violent way. You
Right.
can get messages across in non-violent ways. And I was actually reading about like protests and how they were talking about the non-violent protests. And I don't have the statistics because I don't have the paper in front of me, but non-violent protests have a higher percentage success rate than violent protests
Oh, I
do.
believe that 100%.
Yeah,
And
it was,
the other thing I was going to say, just to jump in, is that when you were talking about graceful, is that to me, in order to be graceful, and it's more of a physical thing, but it can be emotional and spiritual. I really think that, because when I hear that word, I think of dancers. When I hear the word
Mm.
graceful, I think of dancers or someone who does physical something. And in order to be a really good dancer, you have to be freaking strong. You have to be really physically strong to be a graceful dancer, to make it look like it's no effort at all. There is steel strength under that. And so I think when somebody is described as graceful, that really means that they're incredibly strong and they make things look easy when they're really not.
yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to look at that. I like that very much. Um, Angie, did you want to add anything else
No,
regarding
just that
strength?
I was very excited to look at it from a different perspective and really get like an aha moment for myself. And I totally agree with everything you guys have also said about the card. And I just love that in the tarot, you, it addresses, it meets you where you are if you give it a chance and keep your mind open to, that might help. That helped me with when you're giving a reading and you turn over a card and you're like, oh shit, I don't know what that means. That
Yes, I
helped
know
me.
that feeling.
It helped me kind of get over that nervousness. Is like, yeah, you do. And you're always learning. So often, if that ever happens to you, just like give it a minute. Don't panic.
Actually happened to me this last week. I was doing a reading and the lady had picked my Zen deck. And so the illustrations are very different, even though it follows the same structure as the Rider Waite. The illustrations are really different. And so I turned over Major Arcana 11 and I was like, oh shit, what is it? I mean, it has a keyword on the card, but I try to relate if the person is more familiar with the other, the Rider Waite deck. I try to kind of relate it to that, and my brain was just going, what is it? And finally, I remembered that it was justice, and we went forward. But it was just, and it was, probably just a split second little glitch when my mind was like, oh my god, I've forgotten everything, kind of. And so, yeah, and the other one that I sometimes have trouble with is I use the Golden Art Nouveau, and the Justice card and Temperance look so much alike in that deck, the way
Mhm.
they're illustrated. And a lot of times I'm turning them over and looking at them upside down as well. So sometimes I'm just like, and plus Roman numerals, I don't always get the Roman numeral the minute I look at it. So yeah, that's that happens.
Happens to all of us. Happens to the
Yeah.
best.
Think it happens to every single person that
Oh
reads
yeah.
tarot has come
Oh yeah.
across situations such as that. Um,
Absolutely.
all right, so are we ready to pull cards for
Sure.
the spread that we came
Hmm.
up with? Okay, so the spread that we're using is coming from the Light Seer Tarot Guidebook, and it's called Inner Strength, Outer Calm Spread. And there are three cards in the deck. And the first card, which if you were laying them out on the table and you're looking at the cards, the first card is going to be the card on the left, and that is your inner guide. And it's a message from your guide about where I can find my inner fortitude. And that basically means, the courage that you have in adversity. Then on your right-hand side, it will be my inner peace. And this is how can I cultivate and maintain inner peace when the outer world feels chaotic? And to me, that is just so appropriate for what is going on in the world today. And then in the middle is where we would put card number 3, and that is my outer courage. How the outside world views my influence, my power, and my boldness. And the question that you would ask is, how can I foster bravery? And I think that is such a beautiful one to ask, especially, with what is going on in our country um, presently. So, Angie, I'm going to ask if you don't mind going first because the way that you're approaching this and the way that you're approaching strength in general is very different for me. So, I would love to hear what you pulled.
Okay, well, I haven't pulled my cards yet.
Oh,
And
okay.
and like we said, we are talking about this from the perspective of what I discussed earlier in this episode. And the first card that I got for a message about where someone can find their fortitude is I pulled the moon. So
Ooh.
yeah, so that's pretty good. And for inner peace, cultivating and maintaining inner peace, I pulled the Six of Pentacles. And how the outside world views my influence, my power, and boldness, and how I can foster bravery. I pulled the Strength card. So we're just going to set that over to the side for now. And
Yeah, I went
pull
ahead
a
and
new.
took the strength card out of the deck because I figured I would definitely pull it if it was in there.
Yeah, see, I should have done that too. I thought of it and I was like, it's a 1 in 78 chance. And then here you go. Anyway, okay, so I pulled the Eight of Swords. So it's still an 8, which I find fascinating.
Hmm.
And we're talking about concentrating and then mindfully and on purpose. How did I say that? How did she say that? I didn't say it. Concentrate, then control the way you project that concentrated form of energy outward into your defined direction. So, the message from the inner guide on where the fortitude can be found, being the moon, I see that as deep inside of you, maybe somewhere that you haven't actually accessed yet. Maybe there is a place in you that you know is going to be a little tough to face or to deal with. And you're just kind of glancing around the edges. Maybe you might, because the moon, when it's new, you can see it, but it's just a itty bitty bit right there. um, so I think probably whoever this reading is for, their fortitude lies in a place that they are aware of, but haven't really lit their lantern and stepped into the darkness yet. So that's the first thing. And their inner peace being the Six of Pentacles is about giving and receiving. Um, and the Six of Pentacles is about, or pentacles, energy, attention are also resources. Pentacles are your resources, energy, attention, money, real estate in your head, like when you talk to yourself, is also, I think, in my mind anyway, it's a pentacle. Because it's something that it has an effect in the real world, in the outside world. It's not just an inner sort of thing. So I think I would advise them to find their peace after, venturing into the dark a little bit by considering if they are always on one side or the other of the people in the Six of Pentacles. You know how there's someone standing there handing out money, and then there are two people receiving it, and they're on their knees, and it's a very missy matchy, unbalanced thing in this deck. The imagery is, in my opinion. So I think maybe when you have extra pentacles to give them to the people who really need them, who and do so without expecting reciprocity for now. Be careful. Don't give more than you can and still, keep yourself safe and pay your bills and protect your boundaries. And that includes physical boundaries and mental and emotional and spiritual boundaries. So, okay. And then for how the outside world views my influence, power, and boldness, and how I can foster bravery, getting the Eight of Swords, which shows a woman who is kind of standing in a little stream or a puddle, and she's blindfolded and she's tied up, and there are eight swords surrounding her, and she seems at first glance very trapped. But if you continue to look, it's sort of, the bindings are sort of loose, and the blindfold that she's got on doesn't look super secure. And you could maybe start thinking, well, if she just tried a little bit, she could get out. Or maybe she can't. Maybe she has a torn rotator cuff or something. And I think maybe the outside world thinks that you've got it handled because you won't just say, hey, help me, please, lend me a hand. So I think that's how you can foster your bravery and build on that fortitude that you find when you are brave enough. It's kind of a circular thing because you have to be brave to walk towards the scary thing, but you don't have to go all the way in one day. You can take your time,
Well, it
you
can
know.
be really scary. It can be really scary just to ask for help.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you're not confronting something that's dangerous per se. I mean, most people will help you if you ask them to,
Right.
depending on what
That's
you're
what I'm
asking them to
saying.
do. But
Looking at
yeah,
this
it's
card
just,
from
but
the
it can,
outside, you might
yeah,
think, oh, they can just wiggle around a little and get out. And
yeah.
they think that you're there voluntarily. So maybe if you say, "Hey, I have a bum shoulder or my, whatever, or I'm tangled up and I can't freaking move. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't see." Somebody will be like, come along and help you." So that
Yeah,
is,
receiving help can be really, and I can say that for myself, and
mm-hmm,
even when I've had my own disabilities where, I couldn't do something, whether it be my hand or my arm or my, elbow that was bothering me, it was really hard for me to ask, for help because I always wanted to portray this, this mask of, oh, I got it. I can do this. Yeah, like I have, some kind of physical, but I can do this. I don't need your help. And on the inside, it was damn, I wish I would just ask somebody for help. I don't want to
yeah,
be this strong person that, I'm
right,
thinking the outside world needs to see when really I can be vulnerable. I can ask for help. I can put down that guard and say, it's okay,
mm-hmm,
and it's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking about, like when I was growing up and what I saw from my mother, and just my dad, it was like, no matter what was going on, whether you were sick or not sick, you got up there and you did everything and you didn't ask for help. Like you had to get
right,
it done, yourself.
mm-hmm,
And I'm sure there's pretty much a lot of people who, are
yeah,
listening to this podcast that, can relate to that.
Yeah, and the
mm-hmm,
reality is, is that you don't have to,
Yeah.
unless somebody is literally bleeding on the floor and needs an ambulance or needs you to take them to a doctor to be treated because they're in physical danger, or the house is on fire and you have to leave, and if it's not a case like that, pretty much anything can wait until you feel better,
Yeah.
or
Absolutely.
somebody else can take care of it, you know.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and in this, being brave and going into the dark, and the Six of Pentacles also about really respecting your limits and understanding sometimes you will be the one who has extra to give, and
Right.
sometimes you will be the one who needs a little extra boost from someone else, and that it's all very cyclical and it's all okay. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm stuck. Even if from the outside, someone looking outside at you, in at you, might think, well, that's not that bad of a problem. Well, how do
It's
they
not your
know?
problem, so you
It's
don't
not your
know.
problem. So you don't know how it feels
Yeah.
from outside.
Exactly.
And or you perceive someone outside looking in would think that about you. A lot of
Yeah.
times we talk ourselves out of asking for help because we turn ourselves down from the person who will
We like
think,
to
oh,
think for
they don't
other
want to help
people.
me. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So take that step, ask for a little bit of help, and you'll find your way through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
That was really good. Linda, did you want to go next?
Sure. Okay, so I drew my cards while you guys were talking, and like I said, I pulled the strength card out, but I have not turned them over yet because I like to be spontaneous. So the first card, what is it that it says now again? What is the
Okay, so card number one is your inner guide, and it's a message from your guide about where I can find inner fortitude.
Oh, wow. Okay. Um, this is really interesting. I pulled the Seven of Wands, which to me is really about standing your ground. Because in the RWS deck, the guy is up on a higher ground. He's holding his wand. The other wands are, from down below, kind of coming up, like around his knees or thighs, but they're not up high as tall as he is. So I've thought about this card a lot. It can be obviously the strength to say what you believe. I'm standing here. This is my place. I'm going to defend it, whether it's a physical space or an idea or whatever. But I also think it can be like a card of persuasion. It can be like I have another deck called the White Sage Tarot deck, and it's mostly pip cards. It's just like the wands look like kind of stakes. And so, but every card has a ribbon that goes through it that's like a chakra color. And so it shows this one wand, and then these other wands are there, but this ribbon of yellow is kind of weaving through the wands. So when I look at that card, even though it's just wands and no people, I think of being persuaded, coming together, being tied in a group, which we all know that story about the guy breaks one reed and it's really weak, but he puts all the reeds together and he can't break them. Because when you come together in belief or opinion or decision to make action, it's a lot harder to stop, a big group than it is to stop one person. And so that's kind of the message I get from this card.
I love that. And in yoga, yellow is the Manipura chakra, your
Mhm.
solar plexus. It's
Right.
where your fire, well, not fire, it's your personal power. So I think that is a really well done
And it's
deck of the
also
front
from
card.
people that I've worked with, it's also like that since it's in the center, it's also like the connecting chakra between the lower chakras and the higher chakras.
The heart
Yeah.
is in the center.
Well, but it's
But
it's
it's
that
all
kind of yeah,
Yeah, and I
like the
love it
sun.
because it's not, some people sometimes when you're learning about chakras, it's easy to go, okay, this one only handles these things like they're stacked like Legos are, and that's
Yeah,
not how they work. They're more like a
right,
watercolor. Everything kind of blends
right,
together through everything else. So I
right.
love the card. Beauty.
So and then the second card was the inner peak. No.
Yes, card number two was the inner peace, and how can I cultivate and maintain inner peace when the outer world feels chaotic?
Oh, well, it's so interesting. I got the Seven of Cups, two sevens. Okay. Which we talked about the sixes and sevens in our last episode. Um, so this is about to me for inner peace. Okay, so let's just relate it to today. There's so much going on. There's so much happening. There's things. Everything just feels really chaotic. And in this card, this person is looking at all these cups that are full of different things. There's pretty jewels, and then there's a person, and there's a castle, which may be real estate. Then there's this laurel thing, which may be something go after for praise. And then there's one that's hidden. You don't even really know what's underneath it. And so he's just standing there kind of like overwhelmed, sort of like you are when you get in the cereal aisle. When you're in the cereal aisle and there's 50,000 kinds of cereal and you just want something for breakfast.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Cornflakes,
so
it's hard to find.
cornflakes, but there's this cornflake and that cornglake and
Oh,
these
there's 100
cornflakes and
different kinds.
gluten-free cornflakes and blah, blah, blah. So yeah. And so sometimes having so many choices can be very overwhelming. And I think in this case, um, for me, I find things that I like, whether it's groceries or whether it's TV shows or I mean, it's not that I don't want to try different things, but in a situation or in a moment of time where things are so overwhelming, I think it's very helpful to stick to the things that give you comfort. Um, and stick to the things. So sometimes there's nothing wrong with keeping a routine. I get up at 6:30, I have a cup of coffee, I do this, I do that, I feed the dog, I do, that is okay. When everything else outside is just, huge bundle of whatever, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 15 minutes, much less the next day, the way things are going right now. I think in order to cultivate, if you have to do whatever you have to do to cultivate your inner peace, and if that's like, for instance, I was had a little trepidation when I turned off all the social media. Well, not all of it, but I got rid of Facebook and I got rid of Instagram and I got rid of Messenger and I got rid of Twitter and TikTok. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with myself? And it's like, well, you're not going to spend hours a day scrolling. How about that? And so now I've read a couple of books and I've cooked some more stuff and I'm working on some
That's
quilting projects
fantastic.
back here. And, so that's giving me peace. And
Mm,
I look at things, maybe 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, but I'm not doing it like I was for hours at a time. And I feel
same.
better. I feel better for
Mhm.
that. And so I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love that you talked about having a routine every day, because that will help you. If you keep on top of it most of the time, it'll help you be ready if something unexpected happens, or not
Yeah,
to
and
be
I
ready,
don't
but
always
not to
do,
be,
don't always
oh
do
no.
everything all
Yeah.
every day, but yeah, I mean, thanks to the dog, I'm up at a certain time
Right.
because, the dog doesn't have opposable thumbs and he can't let himself out. So
Right.
I get to do that. And then by the time I walk across the room, I'm a morning person. So by the time I get up and walk across the room, I'm pretty much awake. So it's
Mm,
no point going back to bed for me. And so, then I just proceed from there. But yeah, I think that sometimes you really just have to step away or turn your back on the chaos in order to cultivate your inner peace. And I feel like that's very, very important, especially in these days of ultimate chaos.
It's
So
funny that you say that because I was, thinking about that and I have a full-time job, I'm a teacher and just lately with just lots of things that are going on in my life, I feel like I'm getting that peace from just focusing on going to work and working with my students. Because many times, like my mind is thinking about a million freaking things at one time. But like this week, and I mean, I know we record on a Tuesday usually, but I have really been finding that inner peace for myself by really just going into work, focusing on working with my students, helping my students, coming home and working on something that just brings me joy, not thinking about anything else. And that's a routine, right? I go to work,
yeah,
but just approaching that one routine a little bit differently and just saying, I want to add a little bit more focus, and attention to my actual duties as a teacher does bring me joy because one,
right.
I can see how I'm helping the other students, sort of like your Six of Pentacles, right? Like I'm giving, but I am also receiving maybe more, or maybe I'm more conscious of what I am receiving than I would have been if I'm allowing my mind to think about a million things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like that very much.
And the final one is what is the final one? I'm so sorry.
My outer courage. How
Outer
can I
courage.
foster bravery?
Okay, well, it's not a 7, but I got the 9 of Swords, and the 9 of Swords is the woman waking up in the middle of the night, with head in her hands. She maybe has had a nightmare. Maybe she hasn't been to sleep yet. Maybe she just can't go to sleep, and the swords are behind her, going horizontally. But someone in one of our groups, when we had a discussion about these cards, noticed that you can't see the points of the sword. They cut off by the border of the picture. So maybe they don't have points. I don't know. But I think that when you can confront the things that are really keeping you up at night, and again, it's the strength to have to confront what it is. Eventually, if you can come to terms with that, that will give you the courage that you need, your outer courage. Because I honestly don't think there's anything that comes from the outside as a challenge that's worse than the scenarios or the things that I've invented in my own head
Yes.
of what could happen. And because then it happens and you're like, oh, well, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. That's not as bad as I made it up to be, you
Right.
know. And so I think that if you take a minute to just think about that and how brilliant we are at creating these horrible scenarios in our own heads that never happen. And when something even close to it actually does happen, it's really kind of an anticlimax. I think if you can just step back from that a little bit and just say, I'm building this up in my head, and I know from experience it's probably not going to be so bad. And if it is, I've thought about it, and okay, I'll just handle it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. I am guilty of that quite
we
often.
all are. We all are.
I
Yeah,
love
You
that
know?
we both
absolutely.
got swords for that card too.
Oh yeah. What was
Yeah,
yours?
I got the 8
That's
for the
right.
last
That's right
That's
card.
too.
right.
Yeah.
hmm Okay,
Oh, the
Kate, your
8 and
turn.
then the 9. That's pretty good.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so for my inner guide, I got the 7 of Cups, Linda.
Oh,
Um, yeah, which I actually really liked because so I facilitate a new moon circle for the symposium that we're part of.
right.
And my focus for that is regarding fantasy versus reality, right? And when I see the 7 of Cups, in relation to this question, like where can I find my inner fortitude, right? That courage in adversity is for me to be able to decipher or differentiate between of all of those 7 cups and those choices that I have, what is real and what is not real? Or what is fantasy that I'm making up and I want it to be this way? And what is the actual reality of it? Right. And
Right.
this idea of, in order for me to have that courage, right, to get past any kind of adversity or challenges or things that I might be facing, I need to come to a reality about it, right? I need to like not fool myself and to think that this is the way it is because I want it to be that way. But I really need to think about, well, what's the reality of it? And that's hard, right? Coming to
Yeah.
terms with the true reality of something is very difficult, and it takes a lot of inner strength and courage and compassion for yourself to be able to do that, right? To kind of just be able to decide, what is real, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Angie's card too with the moon, right? Because the moon has that same kind of feel to it. It can be very like, ooh, I'm seeing shadows. I'm not really sure what is real and what isn't real, and being able to understand it and know and pick out what is real and what isn't, is something that's very important.
And also
And
what's
then,
yours to deal with and what's not. You know, some things you can affect, and those things live in you. It's you, that's where you have to start with everything, in my
yeah.
opinion, with you. And then you'll be able to, bring it out into the world, which I
And
also
that's
like.
funny because you say that, and
Yeah.
I'll bring it back when I show
Okay.
you the other card because that is
Okay.
also good for another card. So this card number two is my inner peace. How can I cultivate and maintain inner peace when the outer world feels chaotic? And I love this card. It was the Three of Cups. And I'm like, oh my God, how awesome is that to think about your own personal tribe that you can go to for comfort in all the chaos, right? To just be with these groups of people that just make you feel good, that bring you, back into this is the way I want to feel today. This is the way that
Right.
I want to feel. Like I know lots of things are happening on the outside, but right now, these group of people, they make me feel good. They make me feel calm. They make me feel happy and joyful. And I can be who I want to be with them, and I don't have to worry about maybe the masks or the faces that I have to put on when I step outside of those doors to deal with everything that's going on. But I can be me, and they'll appreciate me. And I can rely on them for help. I can be vulnerable in front of them and not feel, like I might be attacked or criticized or judged, about it. So that I really like that. I was really appreciative of that card. And then for card number three, on how can I foster bravery? Thinking about outside world views, my influence, my power and boldness. I got the Six of Cups. And that's the card that reminded me of what you were saying, Angie, because when I was doing some research on the sixes and sevens, our previous episode, one of the definitions that I found for the Six of Cups was it is drawing inspiration from your past while staying mindful of its influencing your influence, the influences on the present. And it's almost like how your past experiences, right, influence your present experiences, and how being aware of like your emotions that you may have experienced in the past regarding a certain situation, and how now are those emotions the same? Do they impact me the same way? Maybe earlier I might have come across to other people as, maybe being a little standoffish, which I've had people say that to me before. They were like, oh, when I first met you, I wasn't really sure about it because you seemed a little standoffish, but it was because I was protecting myself. It was because I was putting on like a certain mask to say, I need to be very careful. I'm not sure if I can trust you. I need to step back, but looking at my past and knowing that, it's kind of like helped me now to just try really hard not to be that way, to not kind of have that I don't want people to see me as that way because I'm the opposite of that, so I work on trying to not come across that way, to others, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't aware or if I didn't go back and try to understand why I was that way. Um, and I think that when you think about bravery, anybody that goes back into their past and looks at how they handled certain situations, and they're able to pick it apart a little bit and really learn how to understand it, and then make changes so that things can be a little differently now. That's like, that's hard shit. That's
That's
like,
really hard work. Yeah, that's like
yeah.
advanced placement geometry,
Right.
it's a hard balance to strike.
And I just wanted to read one thing. So when I was planning for the last episode, the sixes and the sevens, and I didn't write the name of the card, but from my in bulk deck, when I was looking through the cards, I came across one card and it had like a sentence or two that kind of describes exactly what I'm talking about. And I just wanted to read it real quickly. It says, each time you confront the challenges of your past, you open up a little more space, which allows you to fill your life with more joy, abundance, and love. And I love that because it's, like if you go back, you become self-aware of the way that things were. And if you start to work on that and you make those little subtle changes, you start to see, that abundance that we always talk about, come into your life. And that abundance, can be different for everybody.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
the little changes you make inside yourself really do start showing up in the real world in ways that will surprise, amuse, and delight you.
Yeah.
And you start to realize how powerful you really are in your own life. And another thing I wanted to say, Kate, with the sentences you read about the card you got from that Impulse deck is there is nothing in your head that you haven't already survived.
mhm.
Here you are. And next time you're afraid, I want you to remember that. And also that a lot of the big scary monsters that probably hiss at you from the darkness just need you to look at them. They are being scary because up until this point, you have successfully fucking ignored them, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, I'm not talking about anyone who is in a real dangerous situation. I'm talking on a self-improvement, a getting to know yourself
Yeah.
and conquering your the obstacles you put up or you see inside yourself. That's where I believe everyone needs to start for
Yeah.
just about everything. There's scientific studies that I can't quote because I don't have them in front of me that shows that consciousness is what creates matter. It's not the other way around. It just isn't. In my
Yeah.
that's
Everything
something I've
everything
always
has an
kind of
energetic
felt.
origin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Whether it's a an idea that become light bulb,
everything we
literally the
do
light
started
bulb,
out as an
or
idea.
whether it's a disease. I mean, I honestly believe, and again, this is not blaming people. I'm not saying you made yourself sick or
No,
whatever,
no,
but
no, no.
every condition, health condition or whatever, starts off as an energetic imbalance. Let's just say it that way. And sometimes you can balance it out before it manifests any symptoms, and sometimes you don't. And it's not your fault. It's just the thing.
Mm.
And dealing with all of like everything that you're talking about and bringing it back to the strength card, that is all these things that we're talking about are just building your inner strength, right? It's building it, it's making you, more courageous, but it's also making you compassionate about yourself because with courage, right? When you try to be courageous, right? When you try to be brave, sometimes if the outcome is not as you expected, you wind up getting very hard on yourself, right? Or if a challenges arises and maybe you know, um, you didn't overcome that challenge, right? You can kind of withdraw and be like, oh, I'm just so dumb. I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. But when you push past that and you keep going, and I'm going, and the thought in my head, ladies, has just flew away. And now I
Nothing
can't catch
happened.
it and put it into words.
I think maybe I caught it. Nothing can happen if you don't keep going. Nothing will happen if you stop right where you are. And moving is often very intimidating. You feel very afraid.
Yes.
And
And in
Yes.
order for you to keep moving, you have to have that compassion for yourself. You have to have that self-compassion and say, it's okay. You're doing a good job. You can get this. You may not have passed this challenge right now, but we're going to keep working at it,
Right.
and you're going to be
Right.
able to do it. And it's very hard to move forward if you don't have that self-compassion, which is all part of this inner strength that we're all talking about.
And that's
You
how
know,
you
so
Was it Teddy
understand your
Roosevelt?
shadows is
Was it Teddy
by
Roosevelt that said, if you're going through hell, keep going?
keep walking. Yeah. Yep. Some things,
yeah,
the only way out is through, you
Yeah.
know, that
absolutely.
we find ourselves collectively in a period of time like that. And I am choosing to help to use tarot to help me find how to keep going,
Hmm.
and because I'm the only one that I can keep going. And if everybody does their best, we're going to see each other doing our best, and we're going to see someone take a knee or fall down, and we're going to say, "Come here, I got you. I got you.
Absolutely.
You need to rest? That's all right. I'll walk for both of us for a little while, and
Right.
when I get tired, you'll carry me." And that's how it's going to work, and that's how we're going to get through this.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And I feel, and I hope that, our listeners kind of use what we talk about in this episode to kind of make them feel that way, to give that power back to them and say, I can make a difference in my life. And once I make a difference in my life, what I do and what I say and what I show others impacts them. It's that Six of Pentacles, it's giving and receiving, and the more that I heal myself and the more that we talk about the healing process, that has an effect to others. I have noticed that for myself, just even through the symposium, even through my whole sober journey, listening to the stories of others and listening to how they have healed themselves has helped me tremendously, and I have heard from others, the same thing, so it is that give and take, the you put out there and you receive. This was a fabulous episode. I am so happy we finally got to the strength card.
I feel like this is
Um,
going to be one of my favorite ones.
mhm. Yeah, I can definitely see. I mean, we still have like how many more cards left to do? As of right now, yes, I could see that as being a favorite this
Hmm.
episode. Yeah. So thank you, listeners, for joining us today. And we will see you guys
Let's
next
talk
time.
again.
Next time.